When I was 10 years old, several boys in school ganged up on me in an argument that turned into a fight. There were 5 of them against 1 of me, and I went home bloody and bruised. I tried not to cry as my father was cleaning me up and dressing my wounds. And at one point he said, "What are you crying about?" And at 10 years old, it wasn't because of the scratches and bruises. I had fallen off lots of bicycles and trees. Believe me, it wasn't about getting beat up. What really hurt, I said I thought they were my friends. My dad didn't say much at the time. He just kept dressing the wounds, but then he said, "You know, what those boys did was wrong. It was disgraceful and dishonorable." He says, "And listen, you can either go back over there and teach them a lesson, or you can duck your head and hide every time they come by." Now I have to tell you a little bit about my dad. My dad was kind of a cross between Clint Eastwood and Gregory Peck. He was a gentleman, but not someone to be messed with. And he had been teaching me boxing since I was about 7 years old. My father had been a Golden Glove boxer in the Army, and we had lived on the edge of a rough neighborhood. He felt that I needed to learn to defend myself because there were some rough boys in the neighborhood that liked to push little kids around. So my dad taught me to box, and by the time I was 10, I'd been a few rounds, and certainly none of these boys were going to be any match for me. But I looked at my dad with astounded. I said, "Dad, I just got the crap beat out of me, and you want me to go over there and teach them a lesson?" And he goes, "Well, you can do whatever you want, but I know what I'd do." So I said, "Okay, let's go then." And we went over back to the school, and you should have seen their eyes when we walked back onto the field, me walking about 20 paces ahead of my father, who sort of hung back over by the car and leaned against the fender. I knew as long as he was there was not going to be anybody gaining up on me. I told those boys, "Each one of you is going to get your turn." And I stood out on the pitcher's mound and I challenged each one of them to come out and face me alone. And one by one, we had our match. And by the time it was over and I was gotten to the last guy, a group of fathers had gathered around, and some of them had begun to ask my dad already, "Hey, Morgan, what's going on?" He told them what their boys had done. The last kid didn't want to go. He was trying to talk himself out of it and trying to get his father to let him off the hook. And he said, "No, son," he said, "you can go out there and get a beating from him, or you can come home and get one from me, but either way, you got one coming. Because what you did was dishonorable." So when it was over, there was no applause, there were no pats on the back, there were no cheers. In fact, not a word was said. My father and I simply walked back to the car, got in, and drove home. But a rite of passage had taken place. I don't think any father wanted to see his son get punched in the nose. But he taught us all in those moments how to stand up, even against all odds, for what is right. And by the way, the boys from that baseball team, they welcomed me back into their circle of friends and treated me with respect as a good friend from that time on. I've carried this lesson with me throughout my lifetime, and in honor of my father, in honor of the men from our neighborhood. What matters to you in your life? What is the lesson that you're leaving for future generations? What are you as a man teaching the boys in your life? What kind of an example are you setting?